The screen went blank. Not a flicker, not an error message, just the cold, dead stare of a zeroed-out account. $10 million. A lifetime of careful building, of staying up late to run numbers while other men slept, of turning down the flashy deals for the steady ones. Gone. And in that same moment, my phone vibrated. A text from my daughter, Sarah. "Don't contact me again. I know what you did." 2 sentences that erased the last 22 years. My brother, Michael, had taken everything. My fortune, my legacy, my child's love. I was left with nothing but the echo of his laughter and the suffocating silence of my own home. I was a ghost in the life I had built. But then, 3 months later, a small, crumpled envelope arrived. The handwriting was a child's. It was from my nephew, Leo. And that letter, from the one person Michael couldn't corrupt, would change everything. My name is David. For 48 years, I built my life like I built my business, on bedrock. Slow, steady, predictable. I was the man you called when you needed a foundation, not a fireworks display. My company, Hayes Logistics, wasn't glamorous. We managed supply chains. We found efficiencies. It was built on integrity and the quiet confidence that comes from dollar-cost averaging your entire life. A $10 million nest egg secured not by a single lucky break, but by 10,000 days of showing up. If this story is touching your heart, please hit that like button, subscribe, and tap the bell. Where are you listening from today? Let me know in the comments. My brother, Michael, was my opposite. Charisma was his currency. He moved through rooms like a celebrity, all flash and grand gestures. His businesses were always the next big thing, a constant cycle of hype and quiet collapse that I would quietly help stabilize. I saw the envy in his eyes when he toured my offices, a flicker of resentment quickly masked by a brotherly slap on the back. "You're the smart one, Dave, the stable one." Sarah was my world. At 22, she was my carbon copy, meticulous, thoughtful, with my same analytical mind. We had a weekly chess match, a tradition since she was 6. She was starting to ask about the business, about my philosophies on long-term investment. I was preparing her, slowly, to take the reins of the empire I built for her. The first crack appeared subtly. Michael started talking about family protection, a vague, looming threat in the market, he said. Competitors who played dirty. He insisted I grant him power of attorney. "Just as a precaution, Dave, for Sarah's future, so if anything ever happens to you, I can step in and protect what you've built." He framed it as an act of love, a shield for my family. The irony of that would later become a physical pain. The air in the months before the collapse was thick with a false calm. Michael was unusually attentive. Sarah seemed happy, talking about an internship he had arranged for her. I was preparing her, slowly, to take the reins of the empire I built for her. The coercion didn't start with a demand. It began with a manufactured crisis. Michael showed up at my door one evening, his face a mask of theatrical concern. "Dave, we need to talk. It's about Sarah." My heart stopped. He sat me down and spun a web of lies about a stalker, a disgruntled former business associate from one of his failed ventures who had supposedly made threats. He claimed this man was unstable, vindictive, and knew all about my family. He's talking about going after what you love most, Dave. He's talking about Sarah. The fear was immediate and absolute. It bypassed all my logic, all my careful analysis. He played me like an instrument, hitting the one note that would guarantee a dissonant chord. For the next week, he fed the panic. A suspicious car parked outside my house, a series of anonymous threatening emails he'd intercepted. He created an atmosphere of such palpable dread that I could barely think. My carefully ordered mind was clouded with a parent's primal fear. That's when he presented the documents again. This time, it wasn't a suggestion, it was a necessity. This gives me the legal authority to act as you, Dave, to move assets, to create layers of protection. We need to make you a harder target. We need to make your wealth invisible to this predator. He framed the power of attorney not as a transfer of power, but as a shield. He appealed to my core identity as a protector. The signature line on those pages felt like a lifeboat in a storm I believed was real. My hand shook as I signed. Michael patted my shoulder. "It's going to be okay. I'll protect you. I'll protect Sarah." The lie was so complete, so perfectly tailored, that I felt gratitude. The unease returned almost immediately. The stalker vanished. The threats stopped. When I asked Michael about it, he was dismissive. "He's been handled. I told you I'd take care of it." But the financial strangulation began subtly. A quarterly dividend payment I was counting on was delayed due to a system audit. A large invoice from a loyal client was being rerouted to a new, more secure account Michael had established. Each time I questioned him, he gaslighted me. "Dave, you're being paranoid. You're still shaken up from the whole stalker situation. This is just standard finance hygiene. You of all people should understand risk management." The excuses grew thinner, my suspicions thicker. I requested access to the company's financial dashboard, something I checked daily for 20 years. My login no longer worked. "Security upgrade," Michael said. "I'll get you the new credentials." They never came. The man who built his life on verifiable data was now operating on faith in a brother whose stories were beginning to unravel at the seams. The bedrock of my life was turning to quicksand, and I was sinking fast. The collapse came on a Tuesday. I finally bypassed Michael and went directly to the bank. I stood in front of a young manager I'd never met, explaining that I was the owner of Hayes Logistics and needed immediate access to my accounts. He looked at his screen, then back at me, his expression a blend of pity and caution. "I'm sorry, sir. According to our records, the primary signatory on these accounts is a Michael Hayes. The accounts were fully transferred last month. There's a zero balance under your tax ID." The words didn't compute. Fully transferred, zero balance? I felt the air leave the room. I stumbled out onto the sidewalk, the sounds of the city muffled as if I were underwater. $10 million. I drove to my office, my hands numb on the wheel. My keycard failed at the front door. The security guard, a man I'd hired a decade ago, looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes. Your brother gave strict instructions." I found Michael in my office, his office, feet up on my desk, talking loudly on a speakerphone call about streamlining assets. He saw me, grinned, and ended the call. "Dave, what a surprise!" The confrontation was short and brutal. I was trembling with a fury so pure it felt cold. "The money, Michael. The company. What have you done?" The mask fell away completely. The charming brother was gone, replaced by a stranger whose eyes held a flat, predatory gleam. "Done. I saved you from yourself. I saved this company from your slow, plodding, fear-based leadership. You built a sports car and were driving it like a golf cart. I'm just taking it for the spin it deserves." He leaned forward. "And the power of attorney you signed? Completely legal. You gave me the keys. You were emotionally compromised, remember? The stalker? A judge would look at your state of mind and see I was acting in the best interest of the family business." The legal walls he had erected were unassailable. He used my own signature, my own fear for my daughter, as the weapon to destroy me. That same afternoon, my phone rang. It was Sarah. Her voice was ice. "I just got off the phone with Uncle Michael. He told me everything. How you tried to cut him out, how you've been embezzling from the company for years. He played me a recording of you threatening him. It was a masterstroke. While he was financially eviscerating me, he was simultaneously poisoning my relationship with my daughter. I tried to speak, to explain, but she cut me off. I heard you, Dad, on the phone with Uncle Michael. How could you? I stand in the echoing silence of my rented apartment, the first place I'd lived in 30 years that wasn't mine. I lost my fortune, my life's work, and my daughter in the span of 6 hours. The grief was a physical weight, crushing me to my knees. But then, as I knelt on the cold floor, something shifted. The grief didn't vanish, but it was joined by something else, a cold, methodical focus. The analytical part of my brain, the part that built an empire, kicked in. The emotion was set aside, placed in a locked box. The predator had won the first battle, but the war was just beginning. My brother had made one fatal mistake. He thought he had broken me. He didn't realize he had just reprogrammed me. Michael's campaign to permanently alienate Sarah was surgical in its cruelty. He didn't just tell her lies. He constructed an entire false reality, brick by brick, using the tools of our digital age. The proof he presented was a tapestry of deepfakes and clever edits. He showed her a fake audio recording, my voice expertly spliced, where I supposedly said, "I'll ruin Michael if it's the last thing I do. That money is mine." He presented edited text message chains where my words were rearranged to show me as greedy, paranoid, and manipulative. The masterstroke was the staged phone call. He knew Sarah was coming over to his house one afternoon. He called me, and as soon as I answered, he launched into a monologue designed to be overheard. "Dave, I can't believe you'd say that about your own daughter, that you think she's too naive to run the company, that you were planning to cut her out entirely." I was on the other end, sputtering, confused, saying, "What are you talking about, Michael? I would never." But he talked over me, crafting the entire narrative for his audience of one. He hung up, leaving me in stunned silence, and turned to Sarah, who had heard everything. "You see," he said softly, putting a comforting arm around her, "this is what I've been dealing with. He's not well." Her confrontation with me was the most painful moment of my life, surpassing the financial ruin. She came to my apartment, her face a mask of hurt and anger. "I heard you, Dad, on the phone with Uncle Michael. How could you?" I tried to explain, to tell her it was a setup, that he was manipulating her. But the evidence was too overwhelming. In her eyes, I was the liar, the unstable one. She threw my own lessons back at me. "You always taught me to trust the data, Dad. Well, the data is all right here." She was holding a folder Michael had given her, filled with his forgeries. "I don't want to see you again." The door clicked shut, and the sound was the final nail in the coffin of my old life. My attempts to prove my innocence were systematically blocked. Lawyers I contacted were suddenly conflicted out or received anonymous threats. My emails to Sarah bounced back. Michael had created an information vacuum around me, ensuring my voice could never reach her. The heartbreak was a dull, constant ache, but it fueled the new, colder part of me. I stopped trying to reach her directly. It was a strategic withdrawal. Every plea I made was just more proof of my instability in Michael's narrative. I had to win this war, not with emotion, but with irrefutable, cold, hard facts. I began to document everything. Every date, every conversation, every financial record I could still access from old backups. The rebuild would be silent, and it would be absolute. My exile was a study in absolute ruin. I lived in a small, sparse apartment, a place with no history, no memories. The silence was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. My days were no longer filled with board meetings and strategic planning. They were filled with methodical, painstaking documentation. I recreated my financial life from memory and scattered paper records. I built a timeline of Michael's actions, cross-referencing bank transfer dates with his excuses and Sarah's shifting behavior. It was a forensic audit of my own destruction. I made small, precise moves to regain my footing. I took a remote consulting job under a different name, using skills Michael had dismissed as boring. I lived on a fraction of what I was used to, every saved dollar a bullet for the fight ahead. Patience became my primary weapon. Michael's arrogance was growing. He was flashy with his new wealth, buying sports cars, making risky investments. He was turning the stable company I built into his personal casino. Every public mistake he made, I documented. Every business article that hinted at instability at Hayes Logistics, I saved. He was building the case against himself, and I was just the archivist. The only flicker of light came from an unexpected source. My nephew, Leo. He was 9 years old, a quiet, observant boy who had always been closer to me than to his own father. Occasionally, I'd get a notification that Leo had sent me a drawing or a simple hi through a kid's messaging app his mother had set up before the fallout. The messages were innocent, but I read them as subtle attempts to reach across the chasm his father had created. I never replied directly, fearing Michael would find out and cut off that last, fragile thread. But I saved every one. They were a reminder that not everything had been corrupted. Meanwhile, Michael's narrative was tightening around Sarah. He gave her a junior role at the company, a puppet position designed to make her feel involved while he bled the company dry. He was isolating her, making himself her sole source of information and validation. I watched from a distance, my heart breaking anew with every social media post of them together at some charity gala, Sarah smiling a smile that didn't reach her eyes. But I forced myself to wait. A wrong move now would be catastrophic. I was assembling the pieces of the puzzle in silence, waiting for the one piece that would make the entire picture clear. I didn't know it yet, but that piece was already on its way, written in a child's clumsy handwriting and carried by the one person Michael never thought to watch. 3 months into my exile, a small, padded envelope arrived. It had no return address, just my name and the apartment number I'd been forced to retreat to. The handwriting on the label was clumsy, blocky, unequivocally a child's. My breath caught. Leo. I held it for a long moment, my mind racing through the possibilities. Was this another one of Michael's traps? A final cruel trick to see if I would break my silence? My instincts, honed for decades of assessing risk, screamed caution. But something deeper, a fragile thread I thought had been severed, told me to open it. Inside, there was no note, just a single sheet of lined notebook paper folded into a tight square, and a small black USB drive. I unfolded the paper. The letter was written in pencil, with eraser smudges and spelling mistakes, each imperfection making it feel more real, more true. Dear Uncle David, I know you probably hate us, but I saw things. Dad was in your old office late. He was talking to a lady on the computer. He said the words power of attorney and laughed. He said it was easy because you trust him. He was signing papers that weren't his. I have a secret iPad he doesn't know. I record my games. It was on. I put the movie on the stick. I miss chess. Mom says to be good. I think you are good. Love, Leo. The simplicity of it was a physical blow, a child's honest observation cutting through all the adult lies and legal complexities. He was signing papers that weren't his. The truth stripped bare. I looked at the USB drive. A movie on the stick. The emotional impact was overwhelming. This wasn't sophisticated corporate espionage. This was a 9-year-old boy, seeing something wrong and with the only tools he had, trying to make it right. In that moment, the cold, methodical focus I had cultivated shattered, replaced by a surge of emotion so powerful that it brought tears to my eyes. It wasn't just evidence. It was vindication, delivered by the one soul in that house who had remained uncorrupted. The significance was immediate and absolute. This was the turning point. I waited until nightfall, the USB drive feeling like a live wire in my hand. I plugged it into my laptop, my heart hammering against my ribs. The file on the drive was a single video file, labeled Game Recording, October 14th. I took a deep breath and pressed play. The footage was shaky, the perspective low to the ground, as if the iPad had been left on a coffee table. It showed the corridor of my old office, and there was Michael, sitting in my leather chair, his back to the camera. The audio was crystal clear. I heard him on a video call with a woman I recognized as his personal lawyer. "The signature is close enough," Michael said, holding up a document to the webcam. "We'll say he was under duress from the stalker situation. The emotional distress argument is unassailable." He laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "The beauty of the power of attorney is that it makes his signature my signature. I'm not forging anything. I'm just expediting the process." Then he proceeded to do exactly what Leo had written. He took a stack of documents and began signing my name. David Hayes, over and over. Transfer of ownership, bank authorization forms, asset liquidation orders. He signed them with a flourish, a smirk on his face that the camera caught in profile. I watched, my blood running cold, as he methodically dismantled my life with a pen. The conversation continued, him detailing the plan to manage the fallout with Sarah, to control the narrative. He used the word gaslight as a verb, a point of strategy. Hearing my brother, my own flesh and blood, speak about manipulating my daughter with such clinical detachment was worse than seeing the theft. The theft was business. This was a violation of the soul. I watched it 3 times, each viewing solidifying the reality, burning the images and the words into my memory. The cold focus returned, but it was different now. It was no longer fueled by despair, but by the pure, clean energy of truth. I correlated the date on the video file with my timeline, October 14th. That was 2 days after I'd signed the power of attorney under duress. He hadn't wasted a single moment. The moment of absolute clarity was not a shout of triumph, but a quiet, deep certainty. The battle was over. I had won. He just didn't know it yet. The next morning, I walked into the offices of the most respected and notoriously ruthless corporate litigation firm in the city. I didn't need an appointment. I asked for the senior partner, Eleanor Vance, and when the receptionist tried to stop me, I simply said, "Tell her David Hayes is here with the evidence against Michael Hayes." I was shown in immediately. I placed the USB drive on her immaculate desk and slid Leo's letter across the polished wood. I said nothing as she read it. Then I played the video. Her reaction was everything I needed. The professional mask of the seasoned lawyer slipped. Her eyes widened slightly. A slow, grim smile touched her lips. "Well," she said, her voice quiet and deadly, "this is remarkably conclusive." She looked from the screen to me. "This doesn't just give us a case, Mr. Hayes. This gives us a reckoning. We can have a temporary restraining order filed by noon. We'll freeze every asset. We'll have the power of attorney voided by the end of the day." The calm in the room was profound. This was no longer about my anger or my pain. It was about the inexorable application of justice. The confrontation was no longer a matter of if, but when, and I knew exactly how I wanted it to happen. The reckoning arrived 1 week later, staged with the same precision Michael had used to destroy me. Eleanor Vance arranged a meeting under the pretext of a settlement discussion. Michael, arrogant and flush with what he thought was his victory, walked into the conference room expecting a surrender. He was wearing a new, ridiculously expensive watch, a symbol of everything he had stolen. I was already there, seated calmly at the table, Eleanor and a junior associate flanking me. The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Michael's entrance was a performance. "Dave, so good to see you! And you've brought lawyers. Finally ready to see reason." He took a seat, leaning back as if he owned the room, which, in his mind, he still did. I said nothing. I simply looked at Eleanor and gave a slight nod. She didn't smile. She opened a slim folder and slid a single sheet of paper across the polished wood. It was a temporary restraining order freezing all assets of Hayes Logistics and his personal accounts. Michael's smirk faltered. What is this? A desperate stunt. That's when I spoke, my voice low and steady, devoid of the emotion he was waiting for. This isn't a stunt, Michael. It's an audit. I placed a small, discreet speaker on the table. I think you'll want to hear this. I pressed play on my phone. The audio from Leo's video filled the room, his voice clear as day, talking about signing my name, about the power of attorney, his ugly laugh echoing off the glass walls. I watched the color drain from his face. The arrogance collapsed into sheer primal panic. That's a fake, a forgery. You can't. Eleanor cut him off, her voice like ice. We have the original video file, time-stamped and authenticated. It shows you forging your brother's signature on 17 separate documents on October 14th. We also have the testimony of the minor who recorded it. The word minor hit him like a physical blow. He looked from her to me, his eyes wide with the dawning horror of his own son's betrayal. He started to bluster, to threaten, but the legal machinery was already in motion. The police were waiting outside to serve him with further papers. His empire of lies was imploding in real time, and there was nothing he could do but watch. I felt no satisfaction, no glee, only the cold, clean finality of justice. The predator was caught in a trap of his own making. As he was led from the room, a broken man, I felt nothing but a profound emptiness. The victory was absolute, but it tasted of ashes. The legal process was swift and merciless. Faced with incontrovertible evidence, Michael's lawyers advised him to confess to everything in exchange for a slightly reduced sentence. The full, ugly truth was laid bare in a public courtroom. The fabricated stalker, the forged signatures, the systematic gaslighting, the deliberate campaign to turn Sarah against me. The local news covered it with a kind of grim fascination. Local businessman's elaborate betrayal of brother. Sarah was in the courtroom for the key hearing. I saw her sitting in the back row, her face pale and stricken. She heard the prosecutor play the audio from Leo's video. She heard her uncle, the man she had trusted completely, describe his plan to manipulate her. She heard him use the word gaslight as a strategy. I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes forward, my posture neutral. This was her journey now. My part was over. The truth was doing the work I never could. The struggle on her face was a painful thing to watch from a distance. It was the collapse of her entire reality. The data she had so fiercely believed in had been a complete fabrication. The protector she had turned to was the predator. The father she had rejected was the victim. The guilt and the realization were a war inside her. I saw her leave the courtroom quickly, a hand over her mouth. I made no move to follow her. There would be no "I told you so," no pressure. The ball was in her court. The trust that had been shattered could not be demanded back. It had to be rebuilt, slowly and on her terms. Weeks passed. The business was restored to me. I moved back into my home, the silence now feeling like peace instead of punishment. I started the slow work of repairing the damage Michael had done to Hayes Logistics, returning it to its foundational principles of integrity and slow, steady growth. I heard nothing from Sarah. The hope that had flickered with Leo's letter began to dim. I had my name back, my company back, but the hollow space where my daughter belonged remained empty. Then, one Saturday morning, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Sarah standing on the porch. She looked older, her eyes shadowed with remorse. She was holding a chessboard. She didn't say anything for a long moment, just stood there, vulnerable and unsure. I didn't know what else to bring," she finally whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry." I felt a surge of emotion so powerful it threatened to buckle my knees, but I kept my composure. I simply stepped aside and held the door open wider. "It's okay," I said, my own voice thick. "The board is a good start." She stepped inside, hesitant, not yet meeting my eyes. The journey back would be long. There would be difficult conversations, tears, and a lot of time needed to heal. But she had taken the first step. She had come home. And in that moment, that was everything. The victory was no longer just about justice. It was about the fragile, precious chance at redemption. The company returned to its principles of integrity and steady growth. I implemented new safeguards, making the fortress I'd built unbreachable. Leo became a regular visitor, our chess matches a new tradition. The satisfaction wasn't in revenge, but in the quiet restoration of truth. I'd learned that trust isn't a foundation. It's a choice, made daily, with clear eyes. The peace I found was deeper than any I'd known before, built not on blind faith, but on the unshakable bedrock of earned truth. I keep Leo's letter in my desk drawer. Sometimes I take it out, the child's simple words a permanent reminder. The door opens quietly. Sarah stands there, hesitant but not turning away. Our eyes meet, and an unspoken understanding passes between us. Some wounds heal slowly, but truth is the only medicine that works. If you believe in that, hit like and subscribe for more stories where integrity ultimately prevails.